What happens when one of Hollywood's most notoriously short-tempered actors sits down with Britain's supposedly sweetest morning television host? You won't believe what unfolds when Mark Wahlberg's carefully managed public image collides head-on with Lorraine Kelly's razor-sharp questioning about his controversial past. This isn't your typical celebrity chat about upcoming movie projects. This is a masterclass in how a television interview can spiral completely out of control in a matter of minutes. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouses clash on live television. The tension was palpable. From the moment Mark Wahlberg walked onto the Lorraine set, his usual confident swagger seemed slightly forced, his trademark grin a fraction too tight, as he settled into the bright orange chair opposite Kelly. The Boston native had flown into London specifically for this interview, part of his promotional tour for his latest action thriller, but something in the air suggested this wouldn't be the smooth publicity ride his team had orchestrated. Lorraine Kelly, resplendent in her signature blazer and that disarming Scottish warmth that had made her a household name across Britain, welcomed Wahlberg with her usual enthusiasm. But those familiar with her interviewing style would have noticed the subtle shift in her demeanor, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the calculated pause before her opening questions. She'd done her homework, and it showed. "Mark, lovely to have you here," Kelly began, her voice honeyed but with an underlying steel that seasoned viewers would recognize. "Now you're here promoting your new film, which looks absolutely fantastic, but I have to say, I'm fascinated by your journey. From rapper to actor to producer, quite the transformation." Wahlberg nodded, clearly expecting the standard celebrity interview playbook. "Yeah, it's been quite a ride, Lorraine. I've been blessed to work with some incredible people and tell some amazing stories." But Kelly wasn't finished with the pleasantries. She leaned forward slightly, her pen poised over her notes with theatrical precision. "It really is remarkable when you think about where you started. I mean, your early life in Boston wasn't exactly Hollywood material, was it? All those troubles with the law, the violence." The actor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His publicist, sitting just off camera, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. This wasn't the direction they'd agreed upon in the pre-interview briefing. "Well, we all make mistakes when we're young," Wahlberg replied, his Boston accent becoming more pronounced as his defenses went up. "The important thing is learning from them and moving forward." Kelly nodded sympathetically, but her next words carried the sting of a perfectly aimed dart. Of course. Though some might say that when those mistakes involve racially motivated attacks and actual prison time, youthful indiscretion seems rather generous." The studio fell silent. Camera operators exchanged glances. Even the usually bustling production crew seemed to hold their collective breath as Wahlberg's face hardened. His hands, previously relaxed on the armrests, slowly clenched into fists. "I've addressed this before," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I was a different person then. I've made amends, I've done the work, and I don't really appreciate having my past thrown in my face when I'm here trying to talk about my current projects." But Lorraine Kelly had tasted blood in the water, and like any skilled predator, she pressed her advantage. Her smile never wavered, but her words cut deeper. "I'm not throwing anything, Mark. I'm simply asking about the journey. After all, it's quite something, isn't it? Going from someone who committed hate crimes to playing heroes on the big screen. How do you reconcile that with yourself?" The word hate crimes hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Wahlberg's face flushed crimson, his carefully maintained Hollywood composure beginning to crack like ice under pressure. His breathing became more shallow, more rapid, and those familiar with his infamous temper could see the warning signs flashing like neon. "You know what?" Wahlberg said, his voice rising slightly as he shifted in his chair. "I came here to talk about entertainment, to give your viewers something positive. I didn't come here to be ambushed by some talk show host who thinks she's Barbara fucking Walters." Kelly's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise, but her predatory smile widened. "Language, Mark. We are on morning television, though I suppose controlling your temper has always been a challenge for you, hasn't it?" The accusation hit its mark with surgical precision. Wahlberg's entire body tensed, his knuckles white as he gripped the chair arms. The transformation was remarkable. The polished Hollywood star was rapidly being replaced by the street kid from Dorchester who'd solved problems with his fists. "Are you fucking serious right now?" he snarled, leaning forward aggressively. "You invite me on your little show and then sit there taking cheap shots like you're some kind of investigative journalist? You're nothing but a glorified gossip merchant in a cheap blazer." The insult to her professional integrity was clearly calculated, and Kelly's mask of pleasantness flickered for just a moment. But she recovered quickly, her Scottish steel showing through as she leaned back in her chair with infuriating calm. "I'm simply doing my job, Mark. Asking questions that matter. Though your reaction is quite telling, isn't it? Still that same angry young man underneath all the Hollywood polish?" Something shifted in the studio atmosphere. What had started as uncomfortable tension was rapidly escalating into something far more dangerous. Wahlberg's breathing was audibly labored now, his face a dangerous shade of red, as years of carefully managed anger management threatened to explode on live television. But this was only the beginning of what would become one of the most explosive celebrity interviews in British television history. The production team behind the cameras could feel the atmosphere in the studio becoming increasingly volatile. What had started as standard celebrity promotional fare was now careening towards something unprecedented. Kelly's producer frantically gestured from the control room, but the seasoned presenter was either ignoring the signals or completely absorbed in her verbal warfare with Hollywood's most combustible star. Wahlberg sat back in his chair, but it wasn't relaxation. It was the coiled tension of a predator preparing to strike. His eyes never left Kelly's face as he spoke, his voice now carrying the unmistakable edge of someone who'd grown up fighting for respect on Boston's meanest streets. "You know what your problem is, Lorraine," he said, pronouncing her name with deliberate condescension. "You sit in your little bubble here, judging people from your moral high horse, but what the hell do you know about real life? What do you know about growing up poor? About making mistakes when you're just trying to survive?" Kelly's response was surgical in its precision. "I know enough to recognize when someone's trying to play the victim card instead of taking real responsibility. Tell me, Mark, when you were beating Vietnamese men while calling them racial slurs, were you trying to survive then?" The question hit like a physical blow. Wahlberg's face went through a spectrum of emotions: shock, rage, and something approaching panic. His carefully constructed public rehabilitation narrative was being systematically dismantled on live television by a woman he'd clearly underestimated. "That's not. You don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, the confident actor replaced by someone desperately trying to regain control of a situation spiraling beyond his grasp. But Kelly sensed blood in the water and pressed her advantage with ruthless efficiency. "Oh, but I do know what I'm talking about. I've done my research. Unlike the other interviewers who just let you recite your practice redemption speech. Hoa Trinh, remember that name? The Vietnamese man you partially blinded? Have you ever actually spoken to him? Or do you just use his suffering as a stepping stone for your Hollywood comeback story?" The mention of his victim's name was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Wahlberg shot forward in his chair, his finger pointing aggressively at Kelly. "You don't know shit about my life or what I've done to make things right. I've worked my ass off to become a better person, and I sure as hell don't need some washed-up morning show host lecturing me about morality." The personal attack on Kelly's career struck home, and for the first time in the interview, her composure cracked. Her eyes flashed with genuine anger as she leaned forward to match his aggressive posture. "Washed up? I've been broadcasting for longer than you've been pretending to be a reformed character, you arrogant little man. And while we're talking about careers, shall we discuss how you've made millions playing heroes, while actual heroes, the ones who didn't spend their youth terrorizing minorities, struggle to get decent roles?" The accusation hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Wahlberg's breathing was now visibly labored, his face flushed red with barely contained fury. The transformation from smooth Hollywood charm to street-level aggression was complete and frightening to witness. "You sanctimonious bitch," he snarled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you? Sitting there in your perfect little world, tearing people down for entertainment? At least I admit I was fucked up. What's your excuse for being such a miserable cunt?" The profanity-laced attack sent shockwaves through the studio. Crew members looked at each other in disbelief, while Kelly's producer was now frantically making cutting motions across his throat. But Kelly herself seemed almost energized by the verbal assault. Her Scottish fire fully ignited. "There it is," she said with satisfaction, her voice steady despite the personal attacks. "The real Mark Wahlberg. Not the reformed family man, not the charitable philanthropist. Just another entitled celebrity who can't handle being held accountable for his actions. How does it feel to know that millions of viewers are seeing exactly who you really are beneath all that expensive therapy and media training?" The psychological warfare was masterful and devastating. Kelly had maneuvered Wahlberg into revealing his true nature on live television, stripping away years of careful image management in a matter of minutes. But in doing so, she'd also pushed him to a breaking point that threatened to explode into something far more dangerous. Wahlberg was now on his feet, towering over the seated presenter with barely controlled rage. His hands were shaking, his breathing rapid and shallow. "You want to see who I really am? You want to keep pushing me? Because I guarantee you won't like what happens next." The threat was unmistakable. And suddenly, the studio felt charged with genuine menace. This was no longer entertainment. It was a powder keg with a lit fuse. And everyone present could sense they were witnessing something that could end careers, spark lawsuits, or worse. Kelly, to her credit, didn't flinch. If anything, she seemed to relish the moment of maximum tension. "Are you threatening me on my own show, Mark? In front of all these cameras? Because that would be quite the story, wouldn't it? Hollywood star threatens female presenter. I'm sure your publicist would love explaining that one." The calculated provocation was the final straw. Wahlberg's composure shattered completely. Years of anger management sessions, media training, and carefully crafted public relations vanished in an instant as the volatile Boston street fighter emerged in full force. His face contorted with rage as he stepped closer to Kelly's chair, his voice rising to a roar that echoed throughout the studio. "You fucking bitch. You think this is a game? You think you can sit there and destroy someone's life for your pathetic ratings?" His fists clenched and unclenched as he towered over her, spittle flying from his lips. "I should have walked out the moment I saw your smug fucking face." Kelly remained seated, but her eyes blazed with triumph. She had successfully stripped away every layer of Wahlberg's Hollywood veneer, exposing the raw, uncontrolled anger that lurked beneath. Her voice remained steady, but there was undeniable satisfaction in her tone. "And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, the real Mark Wahlberg in all his glory. Still the same violent thug who terrorized innocent people on the streets of Boston. All that talk about redemption, about becoming a better man, complete rubbish, wasn't it? You're still just a bully who can't handle being confronted with the truth." The psychological assassination was complete and devastating. Wahlberg's breathing became erratic as he struggled to process what was happening. His career, his reputation, his carefully rebuilt image, all of it was crumbling on live television, broadcast to millions of viewers across Britain and beyond. "You destroyed me," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You fucking destroyed me for what? For your sick entertainment? I came here in good faith, trying to promote my work, and you ambushed me, like some tabloid vulture." Kelly's response was ice-cold and calculated. "I didn't destroy anything, Mark. I simply asked questions. You destroyed yourself the moment you chose to respond with threats and abuse instead of genuine accountability. This is who you are when you think no one important is watching." The brutal honesty of her words seemed to break something fundamental in Wahlberg. He stumbled backward, running his hands through his hair as the full weight of the situation crashed down on him. The studio was dead silent except for the harsh sound of his labored breathing and the barely audible whir of cameras still rolling. "Fuck this," he finally gasped, his voice hoarse from shouting. "Fuck this show. Fuck you. And fuck anyone who thinks this was journalism. This was a fucking assassination." He began yanking at his microphone, his movements frantic and uncoordinated. The sound technician started forward, but Wahlberg's wild eyes and aggressive posture kept him at bay. Finally managing to tear the mic pack from his belt, he hurled it across the studio where it shattered against the wall with a satisfying crash. "You want a show? You got your fucking show," he screamed, his voice now raw and desperate. "I hope you're happy, you sadistic bitch. I hope destroying people's lives gives you the sick satisfaction you're looking for." Kelly watched his meltdown with the cold satisfaction of a chess master delivering checkmate. The only thing I'm satisfied about is that viewers finally got to see the truth. How many more interviews would you have done, playing the reformed character, while never truly acknowledging the pain you caused? At least now everyone knows who they're really dealing with." Her words were the final nail in the coffin. Wahlberg let out a sound that was part roar, part anguished cry, his hands shaking uncontrollably as rage and despair warred within him. The polished Hollywood star had been completely annihilated, replaced by a broken man whose deepest secrets had been weaponized against him on live television. "You're evil," he said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying more venom than all his previous shouting. "You're fucking evil, and someday karma is going to catch up with you. I hope when it does, someone like you is there to watch you burn." With those final words, Mark Wahlberg turned and stormed toward the studio exit, leaving chaos in his wake. His expensive suit jacket caught on a camera as he passed, nearly toppling the equipment. He kicked viciously at a production assistant's chair, sending it spinning across the floor, before disappearing through the studio doors with a slam that reverberated through the building. The silence that followed was deafening. Crew members stood frozen, uncertain whether to continue filming or shut down the disaster they had just witnessed. Kelly, meanwhile, turned to face the main camera with the composed professionalism that had made her a television institution. "Well?" she said, smoothing down her blazer and adjusting her papers as if nothing extraordinary had happened. That was certainly illuminating. We'll be right back after these messages with a much lighter segment about weekend gardening tips. As the cameras finally stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, the full magnitude of what had just occurred began to sink in. In less than 30 minutes, one of Hollywood's biggest stars had been systematically destroyed on live television, his career potentially ruined by a confrontation that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. The crew began the cleanup process in stunned silence, picking up the scattered remnants of Wahlberg's microphone and straightening the furniture he had displaced in his fury. But the real damage, to reputations, careers, and public images, would take far longer to assess and repair. Lorraine Kelly had achieved something remarkable and terrible. She had conducted what might be remembered as the most brutal celebrity interview in television history. Whether history would remember her as a fearless journalist who held a powerful man accountable, or as a manipulative host who destroyed someone for entertainment remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. No one who witnessed Mark Wahlberg's spectacular meltdown would ever forget the moment when Hollywood's carefully constructed facades came crashing down on live television.